The filmmaker, Georges Méliès, was one of the first to realize that films had the power to capture dreams.
Georges Méliès is an icon throughout the world. Not only was he one of the very first filmmakers in the history of cinema, he was certainly the inventor of a modern way of storytelling.
George is the one who really brought the theatrical and the fantasy and the magic to what we now call the movies.
The wonderful Georges Méliès was largely responsible for the first, albeit short, narrative films.
There's no one on the planet that knows the history of film like Martin Scorsese does. And there's no doubt in my mind that when Marty read the book, that's what he took to. The real homage it pays to cinema and to Georges Méliès.
Méliès pretty much did everything that we're doing now with the computer, with green screen, with digital. But he did it in the camera.
When I read the book, The Invention of Hugo Cabret, I saw that Brian really understood my great-great-grandfather, Georges Méliès. Georges Méliès was a wonderful man and a wonderful filmmaker to create his own movies. It was the passion of his life.
Action!
Georges Méliès's real life read like a movie. And so I basically just built Hugo's entire plot off of what really happened to Georges Méliès.
When I was reading the book, I didn't realize that the older gentleman in the toy store was going to turn out to be Georges Méliès. It's a true story. He did wind up in a toy store in that train station in Paris. He was broke, and he was found.
Georges Méliès originally came from a family of shoemakers, and he hated shoes. And he eventually sold his half of the shoe factory and became a magician.
And Méliès studied under Robert Houdin, the key magician of the period.
In 1888, Georges Méliès, he bought the Robert Houdin Theater. He bought with the set, costume, and everything, and he started to create his own magic tricks. Fanny Manieux was an assistant magician in the Robert Houdin Theater. And she loved to say that Georges found her with the furniture, because when Georges bought the Robert Houdin Theater, she was already there. They worked together, and I think that they fell in love. And in 1895, he discovered the moving pictures.
He was there at the first screening in 1895 of the Lumiere Brothers in December 28. He saw the immediate success of that and wanted to buy a camera from the Lumiere Brothers.
The Lumieres, they wouldn't sell it to him. So he went to London and he found some projectors and apparatus there. And he bought them and he took them apart and he created a projector and created a camera and basically invented his own machinery.
Méliès realized that this new technology of cinema was a technology of magic. And he could do on cinema things that he could only dream of doing on stage.
Then in 1896, he was at the Place of the Opera filming a bus. All of a sudden, his camera gets stuck, and by the time he can resume filming, of course, the bus is gone, and a hearse has arrived in its place. And of course, when he watches the final result, the bus changes into a hearse. He instantly thought of the possibilities.
Once he saw that cut where something changed into something else, he never stopped figuring out ways to expand on that idea and to make it clever and to make it fun. It's the simplest of movie tricks, but no one ever has topped Georges Méliès for coming up with a number of ways to use it.
He started to create fantastic dreams, extraordinary travels, fantasies, and science fiction. He had the imagination, the creativity to make all these movies.
Méliès would not only act in every single film he did, but of course direct them, explain the technicians what to do. So in a way, he was the cameraman, but he would also do the set design, the set painting, he will do the costumes. Méliès was called the cinemagician because he was actually performing magic tricks in front of us.
The real trick that Méliès began playing with was not only seeing things move, but seeing things move in ways that were not necessarily natural. Going from the Earth to the moon in a single cut. Going from someone having a head to having no head.
Méliès was a one-man band. Take, for example, L'Homme Orchestre. You have Méliès 9 times. To do that, you need to film each single time Méliès, then go back, put the chair a little apart, and do it again, and then do it again. And of course, sync everything.
You have this multi-level thing going on with him as a filmmaker and as a technical person trying to tell the story without you being aware of the tricks. He'll have his head in a box and the camera will move, but you won't see the camera move because he's got black behind it, so it looks like his head is growing. He was aware of spatial relationships and he's playing with those.
George Méliès is unbelievable. The guy made 500 movies and had the vision to really create magical elements. And all this is scenes in Hugo, just recreating that whole world.
Starting with his studio, which looked like a greenhouse, but it was his studio to let all the light in. So we built that studio in the film. We were able to build it to the actual specifications of the real studio.
Sorry, camera, are we clear?
One of the things that was really exciting to me was seeing Marty direct stories being told by George Méliès.
It's a wonderful homage to Georges Méliès because people could understand how the movie were created.
Action!
The authenticity has to be there. I showed up and was blown away by the size and scope of the set. So George Méliès, to bring him back to life was like Marty bringing back the past.
I had to decide which of these films we were going to show being created. We started with many and started honing it down and honing it down and honing it down until finally I decided, yes, we'll deal with them. A spectacular one called Kingdom of the Fairies. We thought that would be interesting to show how he did underwater sequences. And then we also did a scene from Faust.
I'm ready.
Which he plays Mephistopheles and he goes in a trapdoor. And we created this dragon, which is sort of a combination of different dragons that he had in different films.
Attack! When you do magic tricks, you have to be disciplined, trained, and do everything by the millimeter. Obviously, when you do trick films, it's exactly the same route. Each actor needed to be exactly in sync so that the trick would work.
Freeze! Cut!
Everything was very, very specific. Metronomes on the set, measurements. Everyone had to freeze in position.
Freeze!
And he had to rewind the film. And when you rewound the film, there was no counter. They would sing little nursery rhymes in their heads for the rhythm, for the speed of the camera.
I saw that. Give me 2 minutes.
And all of these things he was discovering, and he just made it up as he went along.
Benny, I'm gonna have a word.
He must have run a really tight ship. The crew must have been very, very disciplined indeed. But I hear he ran it very affectionately.
And gentlemen, move that ladder, stop cranking.
It was like a celebration for all of us. But we just wanted to capture the spirit of it, the fun, the enjoyment of creating something like that every day.
Méliès actually shot more than 500 films, which only 200 do survive.
He started making films when he was 34, and his career as a filmmaker was pretty much over as he hit his early 50s.
He was a child. He was playful. He was curious. He wants to have fun. And he was not a businessman. And I think that's one of the reasons that he lost everything.
In 1911, Méliès makes a deal with Pathé. He's out of money and needs a distribution company to back him. So he gives as a guarantee his house and his studio, and with the money he gets, keeps doing films. But actually, that year, 1911, no one really seems to be interested in the films. And eventually, at the end of 1912, Pathé says, enough. No more Méliès films, no more production. And that's how Méliès' career ends after 16 years of production.
He was so heartbroken that he took all of his old props and his old films and he burned them and he melted them down. And a lot of his old films were melted down and turned into shoe heels. For this man who had grown up hating shoes and shoe factories, for his films to end up as shoes themselves was one of the most heartbreaking details that I read about when I was learning about Méliès.
And then for the next 7 or 8 years, he will live by being in a toy shop in the station of Montparnasse, the train station. And eventually he will marry Jeanne d'Alcy, who was called Fanny in real life. They would live a happy life, although it would be a poor life.
And that was where he was found in the late 20s, virtually forgotten.
The toy shop we have replicated perfectly from photographs and from memory of people close to him. So the nudge of history is delicate and charming.
And then in 1929, there was a shopkeeper that came and said, Hi, Mr. Méliès, how are you?
I thought I might see you today.
And then Léon Druot, the editor-in-chief of the La Revue du Cinéma, a newspaper, heard what the shopkeeper said, and he asked him, excuse me, mister, are you a relative of the filmmaker Georges Méliès? And Méliès said, yes, that's me, I'm Georges Méliès. And this man, Léon Druot, and other newspapers started to write articles about his life. And then a few months after, in a castle in Normandy, Jean Mauclair discovers boxes, and a few of them were Georges Méliès movies. And so Mauclair decided to organize a gala for Méliès to screen all these movies.
We now have over 80 films by Georges Méliès.
He was very touched. It was the first time people saw his movies. It was a huge success. It was very emotional for him. I was in Paris when they shoot the gala, where Méliès was recognized. And I met Ben Kingsley, who played my great-great-grandfather. They had the same eyes, mischievous, curious, and bubbly. I said to him, when I speak to you, I speak to him.
I address you all tonight as you truly are. Wizards.
This gala happened December 1929, and all my family was there. They were touched, and it was very emotional for them.
He's my godfather, you see, and very much alive.
That's what I love about this story, is that even though it is a made-up story, they bring these actual people into it.
Is that where you wanted us hung? Is that right?
Fanny Manieux, his second wife, she was graceful, charming. She was like a little fairy. And when I met Ellen McCrory, who played her, it was the same. I met also little Chloe, who played Isabelle in the movie.
How about letting me see your covert lair?
Georges had two granddaughters, my grandmother and Madeleine. Isabelle and Madeleine have a lot in common. They were curious, they love adventure. And Madeleine started to live with Georges and Fanny at the age of 7, and she was surrounded by a lot of love, and she is still alive. In March 1931, they organized a big party for the Cinema Commission, and Léon Boutillon was the president, and he made a wonderful speech and said Georges Méliès and Lumière are the founding fathers of the cinema.
And this is one of his actual cameras.
In October 1931, Méliès received the Légion d'honneur.
It's beautiful to me that his life ends on a happy note. They gave him a place to live, and he ended his life starting work on a new movie.
A lot of his films survived because they were scattered to the different archives around the world, Spain, New Zealand, all different kinds of places.
Every year they find a couple more somewhere, extraordinarily preserved in many cases.
Méliès is still doing magic today. His color films are more brilliant than the best Technicolor films. The Trip to the Moon, for example, only existed in black and white until a few years ago, where a color print was found in Barcelona. That print probably disappeared in 1907, 1910. 100 years later, it reappears. Name one magician that can disappear in 1905 and come back in 1995.
And it's interesting how even people who've never seen A Trip to the Moon may have seen that moon face with the rocket in its eye. You don't even necessarily know the work, but you know the image.
He's the father of every single director in the world, because he was the first to understand that the camera, you can shoot everything with it, and that you can create your dreams.
If you've ever wondered where your dreams come from, you look around.
Méliès pretty much established everything we're doing today. There's no doubt if he had his hands on the equipment we have now, he would advance it another 100 years. This has been a real privilege to recreate the atmosphere of the first films being made by somebody like Méliès. His influence is everywhere.